The tragic end for the one who wanted to assassinate the Buddha. Welcome back, everyone, to Mind Podcast. There is information suggesting that the Buddha was assassinated by one of his closest disciples. What is the truth behind this story? Let's explore it in today's video. During the Buddha's lifetime, with his superlative wisdom, dignified conduct, and boundless compassion, he transformed the lives of countless beings. Many who saw him even once or heard him preach at the monastery were inspired to renounce worldly life, embracing a monastic life of purity and detachment from family and worldly ties. From the time he started teaching to the moment he entered nirvana, the Buddha ordained many disciples. From the initial 5 companions, including Kondana, to the last disciple, Subhata, there were many who later attained enlightenment and became revered saints, such as Sariputta, Moggallana, Ananda, and Kassapa. However, among them was one disciple with a very peculiar nature, Devadatta. Despite being a follower, Devadatta spent much of his life opposing the Buddha, seeking ways to harm the teachings, and even attempting to kill him. Like Prince Siddhartha, Devadatta was born into the warrior caste, the aristocratic royal class of the time, and he was Siddhartha's cousin. After Siddhartha renounced his princely life, attained enlightenment, and became the Buddha, he returned to Kapilavastu to visit his father, King Suddhodana, and his relatives in the royal palace. During his time in the capital, he converted numerous nobles of the Shakya clan to monastic life, and Devadatta was among those who joined. However, unlike the other disciples who diligently practiced and eventually attained the level of Arhat, Devadatta pursued a different path. Devadatta's deceptive schemes and attempts to harm the Buddha. Devadatta was only focused on cultivating supernatural powers without achieving any real spiritual attainment. Gradually, his ego grew stronger, and he began to harbor the ambition of replacing the Buddha as the leader of the monastic community. He thought, "I have supernatural powers, and I'm related to the Buddha. In what way am I inferior to him? I have significant influence within the Sangha." Driven by these thoughts, he resolved to take over the Buddha's position. With this in mind, he attempted various malicious acts to harm the Buddha and the Sangha. Specifically, Devadatta tried 3 times to harm the Buddha. 1. First attempt, releasing an intoxicated elephant. Devadatta conspired with King Ajatashatru to release a furious elephant to attack the Buddha. One day, when the Buddha and his disciples went on alms rounds to the city of Rajgir, Devadatta had a fierce elephant intoxicated with alcohol and released it. As the Buddha and the monks were walking into the city, the elephant charged toward them, trumpeting furiously. Devadatta and King Ajatashatru were confident that this time the Buddha and his disciples would be trampled to death by the rampaging elephant. However, something miraculous happened. When the elephant neared the Buddha, it sensed his compassionate presence and knelt at his feet in submission. The plan of Devadatta and King Ajatashatru failed. 2. Second attempt. Rolling a boulder to harm the Buddha. Unrelenting after the first failure, Devadatta devised another plan to harm the Buddha. One day, while the Buddha was on his way down from Vulture Peak after collecting alms, Devadatta climbed to the top of the mountain and prepared to push a large boulder down to crush the Buddha. He carefully timed his actions, waiting for the Buddha to pass a particular spot. However, the earth deities intervened, causing a protrusion in the mountain to deflect the boulder. A small fragment of the stone flew off and struck the Buddha's foot, causing it to bleed. Number 3. Third attempt, creating division in the Sangha with 5 propositions to challenge the Buddha. After these failed attempts, Devadatta continued his harmful actions by proposing 5 difficult rules to create a division within the Sangha in opposition to the Buddha's teachings. After many failed attempts to harm the Buddha, Devadatta decided to gain control and create divisions within the Sangha, monastic community. He noticed the Buddha's disciplinary rules for monks and lay practitioners. Lay followers were to observe 5 precepts, monks were to observe 10, and fully ordained monks, bhikkhus, were to observe 250 rules. These rules were designed to help the Sangha achieve inner peace and focus on mindfulness. However, Devadatta, in his ambition to surpass the Buddha, created 5 additional stricter rules, intending to present himself as a more virtuous leader. These rules were as follows. 1. Monks must reside in the forest and not venture outside. 2. Monks must sleep under trees and not use any other form of shelter. 3. Monks must wear patched robes made from discarded cloth found in cremation grounds, hospitals, or other discarded places. 4. Monks must rely solely on alms collected during begging rounds and should not accept invitations to meals from lay followers. 5. Monks are prohibited from eating meat or fish and should only consume vegetarian food. Devadatta imposed these rules, claiming, "Now that I have stricter rules than the Buddha, I have achieved a higher level of spiritual practice than he has. Those of you who wish to follow a higher path should come with me." Approximately 500 monks were influenced and followed Devadatta to establish a separate monastic community. However, the Buddha sent his disciples Sariputta and Moggallana to guide these monks back, and gradually, they came to realize the teachings and returned to the Buddhist Sangha. Ultimately, Devadatta was left alone. In his final days, Devadatta fell gravely ill and was filled with remorse. Realizing his mistakes, he wished to seek forgiveness from the Buddha and requested that the monks help him return to apologize and seek refuge in the Buddha's compassion. However, when he got within a few hundred meters of the Buddha, the earth opened up and swallowed him, pulling him into the depths of the ground and sending him into hell with no hope of rescue. From another perspective, we can see that the ascetic practices proposed by Devadatta aligned closely with the prevailing views of the time, which is why many members of the Sangha supported it. This was a common practice in some religions in India during that period. Even today, the influence of ascetic practices is still evident. An example of this is a Hindu devotee who claimed to have raised his arm to the sky since 1973. Though his right arm is now little more than skin and bone and cannot move, it has become a symbol for devotees of Lord Shiva. Mr. Amar Bharati, who once had a stable job, a house, a wife, and 3 children, woke up one morning in 1970 and decided to renounce everything to dedicate his life to serving Lord Shiva. He dressed simply and began wandering the streets of India, carrying only a trident. 3 years later, Amar Bharati found himself still too attached to worldly pleasures, and thus decided to raise his right arm and keep it elevated, which he has done for the past 38 years. Some believe that Amar Bharati raised his arm in sorrow over the wars happening around the world, hoping to call for peace. According to Adi Central, Amar Bharati has inspired many other devotees, some of whom have raised their arms to the sky for 7 years, 13 years, and even 25 years, enduring considerable pain along the way. Hindu devotees have various ways of expressing their devotion, such as abstaining from bathing, practicing a vegetarian diet, or sleeping upright. Amar Bharati's approach is quite unique. However, from the Buddha's perspective, all forms of ascetic practice cannot bring about the liberation of all beings, nor can they help one cultivate the Bodhi mind to attain enlightenment and become a Buddha. All devotees pursuing ascetic practices emphasize that the core purpose of practice is the heart. The foundation of all spiritual practices lies in the heart. The path of asceticism shows no sign of bringing joy or support for enlightenment. There is a famous saying, "The monk's robe does not make a monk." A well-structured method or secret technique does not always create true practitioners. Only a pure heart can transform an ordinary person into a Buddha. The story of an emperor will help you understand this better. Emperor Liang Wu Di, whose real name was Xiao Yan and styled Shu Da, was a 25th generation descendant of the statesman Xiao He from the Han dynasty. He was the only emperor who enjoyed living as a monk, maintaining a vegetarian diet and avoiding worldly desires. In the year 527, the Zen patriarch Bodhidharma traveled by sea from India to the southern seas. Emperor Liang Wu Di, who greatly admired him, sent an envoy to invite Bodhidharma to the capital, Jinling, to teach the Dharma. When he met Bodhidharma, Emperor Liang Wu Di, feeling pleased, asked, "Since ascending the throne, I have built many temples, ordained numerous monks, printed sutras, and performed good deeds without rest. What merit have I gained from this?" Bodhidharma replied, "None." This answer was like cold water splashed on Emperor Wu Di's face, prompting him to ask, "Why?" Bodhidharma replied, "Because these deeds are with leaks. While they seem to hold merit, they are not true merit." The emperor then asked, "What is true merit?" Bodhidharma answered, "It is the realization of the essence of wisdom, the the formless true nature that is inherently pure and subtle. True merit cannot be sought through worldly methods. When asked, "What is the supreme noble truth?" Bodhidharma answered, "Absolutely no holiness." Surprised, the emperor asked, "Then who is speaking to me now?" Bodhidharma replied, "I don't know." Emperor Liang Wudi did not comprehend and showed dissatisfaction. Realizing that their affinity was not aligned, Bodhidharma took his leave and went north to the Shaolin Temple on Mount Song, where he meditated facing a wall to propagate his teachings. Bodhidharma taught that true merit is inherently complete within one's own nature. Merit does not increase by giving, nor decrease by withholding. Good deeds are essential actions not to be done for the sake of merit. Zen's guiding principle is to direct one's heart and become a Buddha, free from inner and outer distinctions, without self, without others, without saintliness or sin. When Bodhidharma said, "Absolutely no holiness," Emperor Liang Wudi could not grasp it and thus could not accept it. According to historical records, Emperor Liang Wudi built hundreds of temples, ordained countless monks, organized numerous charity events, offered alms, cast bells, sculpted statues, and printed sutras in uncountable numbers. He believed these actions would bring great merit. However, he was shocked when Bodhidharma answered his question with none. Why is that? Some people, misunderstanding the principles, explained that Emperor Liang Wudi did not personally carry out these tasks but only instructed others to do so, and thus had no merit. Later, someone brought this issue to the sixth patriarch Huineng, who explained it as follows. Indeed, there was no merit at all. Emperor Liang Wudi, not understanding the Truda, confused merit with blessings. Building hundreds of temples, ordaining numerous monks, organizing ceremonies, offering alms, casting bells, creating statues, and printing sutras are external acts that benefit others. These deeds are blessings, actions that bring blessings. Blessings have the power to reduce karma, eliminate retribution, bring safety from disasters, and bestow good fortune and happiness in life. They can remove obstacles on the path, but do not help us escape the cycle of birth and death. On the other hand, merit is the internal cultivation that benefits oneself through practicing as taught in the Buddha's sutras. Constantly reciting the Buddha's name, observing the precepts, practicing meditation, and developing prajna wisdom. Merit has the power to help us cross the sea of suffering, awaken from illusion, and reach the shore of enlightenment and liberation. Merit is pure and transcends the cycle of birth and death, helping individuals transform their minds from ordinary beings to bodhisattvas and Buddhas. When we do things like building temples, contributing to their construction, participating in the development of temples, or supporting the activities of temples and the Buddhist community, we help others have a foundation for cultivating the path, and give Buddhism an opportunity to expand more robustly, reaching more people with good affinities. Emperor Liang Wudi confused blessings with merit. Although these actions bring great benefits to many, providing ample blessings without personal cultivation, without training the mind, learning the sutras, observing the precepts, practicing meditation, or developing prajna wisdom, all these actions remain external deeds that benefit others, but they do not contribute to one's own enlightenment and liberation. Why is this so? Because the internal greed, anger, and ignorance not only fail to diminish, but tend to increase. Ignorance and afflictions do not disappear at all. In fact, they grow denser due to the attachment to one's own accomplishments. One may think, I have done so many beneficial deeds that few others can match, leading to an inflated sense of pride and arrogance, looking down on others and exalting oneself. Contributions such as distributing sutras for others to read, while not reading them oneself, or offering support to the poor and needy without understanding the deeper meaning behind these actions, can foster a desire for substantial rewards in the heavenly realms. All of these actions generate blessings alone. For example, someone may give alms to the poor or donate money with the desire to win the lottery, succeed in business, or secure personal safety, prosperity, love, or peace. When greed becomes excessive in this way, how can there be merit? Such actions yield only limited blessings, corresponding to the amount given. Sowing a small cause yields a small result. It cannot be otherwise. We should diligently perform all good deeds and then forget about them, not clinging to them to boast of our contributions or seek blessings in return. If we let go of the desire for recognition, our pride will diminish and our ego will lighten. Then our actions benefit both others and ourselves, bringing blessings and merit. Thus, to cultivate true virtue, the first step is to maintain a pure mind. We can conclude that Devadatta symbolizes the inner demon within each of us, representing the greed, anger, and ignorance of all sentient beings. In the Jataka tales, many accounts mention the enmity between the Buddha and Devadatta. Whenever the Bodhisattva Siddhartha manifested in life to teach and transform others, Devadatta would follow him, seeking ways to harm him. When the Bodhisattva appeared as a noble king, Devadatta would appear as a hunter. When the Bodhisattva manifested as a wise and compassionate merchant, Devadatta would take on the role of a malicious and deceitful trader. From this, we can see that it was not only in this lifetime, but over countless past lives, that Devadatta persistently followed the Buddha to try and sabotage him. However, due to the Buddha's boundless compassion, even though Devadatta committed numerous misdeeds, he was ultimately forgiven by the Buddha and was prophesied to attain Buddhahood after repaying his karmic debts in hell and cultivating the path to enlightenment. Generally, in the Theravada scriptures, Devadatta is depicted as a malevolent person who committed numerous transgressions. Conversely, in the Mahayana scriptures, Devadatta is portrayed as a bodhisattva who practiced opposing practices, meaning he undertook actions that hindered the spiritual cultivation of others. By following and practicing these opposing practices, Devadatta enabled the Bodhisattva Siddhartha to cultivate patience and endurance. Through fully practicing these 35 virtues, the Bodhisattva was able to achieve enlightenment and become a Buddha. The Buddha never regarded Devadatta as an enemy. Instead, he saw him as his greatest spiritual benefactor. Without Devadatta, the Buddha might not have been able to so readily attain the fruit of enlightenment. The image of Devadatta symbolizes adversity, the difficulties in daily life, and on the path of learning and practicing Buddhism. People must know how to overcome adversity and challenges in order to grow. For practitioners, overcoming difficulties is essential to achieving liberation. We need to understand that human wisdom matures in silence, while character matures in the storm. An airplane takes off against the wind, or a ship in the harbor is safe, but ships are built to brave the sea and face powerful waves. These sayings encourage us to view adversity as an opportunity to rise above. Life's storms may knock us down, but after every fall, we must stand up and continue forward. If we shrink back or retreat in the face of difficulty, we will never achieve results on the path of spiritual cultivation. The image of Devadatta represents the hardships and trials, while the image of the Buddha represents one who has overcome these challenges. We must follow the Buddha's example to find peace, joy, and strength on the path to enlightenment. There will be people who bear malice and seek to harm us, people who insult and humiliate us, even people who physically harm us or wish for our demise. How should we respond to them? If someone strikes us and we strike back, does that solve anything? As the Buddha taught in the Dhammapada, hatred is never appeased by hatred in this world. Only by love is it appeased. This is an eternal law. Indeed, repaying hatred with hatred only piles resentment higher like a mountain. In contrast, using compassion to transform hatred causes resentment to dissolve naturally. A true practitioner of Buddhism must know how to nurture compassion. It is easy to show love to those who love us, but to cultivate compassion for those who dislike us is the real challenge. Yet, accomplishing the difficult task is what defines a genuine practitioner. Moreover, we should develop a sense of pity for those who harm us, for they may suffer painful retribution in the future. We should vow to use various means to help guide them, and as we gradually cultivate compassion, resentments will lessen. Over time, they may become good friends and virtuous companions. Devadatta himself is a vivid lesson for future generations. We must examine ourselves to avoid his path, neglecting internal transformation and instead seeking supernatural powers, craving fame, and wanting to lead the monastic community. He allowed pride, arrogance, jealousy, and anger to dominate him, causing him to make mistakes. Though he lived within the Dharma, he failed to taste its sweetness. Though he lived in liberation, he generated new attachments, resulting in painful consequences. We must take him as a cautionary example and strive not to repeat his mistakes. We should focus on cultivating and transforming our inner selves, learn to control our thoughts, and not let negative intentions arise. Only then can we find peace and liberation on the path of spiritual practice.